Is drinking raw milk safe like RFK Jr. suggests? Can you reduce a glucose spike if you eat your food in, quote unquote, the right order? I'm registered dietitian Abby Sharp. I host a nutrition myth-busting podcast called Bite Back with Abby Sharp. And those are just some of the questions I tackle with qualified experts on my show. There is so much food misinformation and disinformation out there, and it can feel impossible to know what's real and what's BS. On Bite Back, my goal is to help listeners create a pleasurable relationship with food, their body, and themselves, which in my opinion is the fundamental secret to good health. Listen to Bite Back wherever you get your podcasts.
Build a polished wardrobe that shows you stay you wherever you go with Mack Weldon. Use code MAC25 for 25% off your first order of $125 or more at MackWeldon.com.
Frequency Podcast Network. Stories that matter, podcasts that resonate.
Well, we all know how expensive it is to buy a home right now. Housing affordability has been a major talking point for all levels of government for several years. But despite all of the talk, the actual action has been pretty slow. Housing starts today are running at a pace that's nowhere near where it would need to be from a supply standpoint. And the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation this week said to restore affordability levels to where they were pre-pandemic in 2019, well, the country would need 4.8 million new homes constructed over the next decade. So that's about 430,000 to 480,000 homes every year. Today, housing starts are running at around 250,000, give or take. It's a big disconnect. Part of the issue is the home building industry itself. Yes, you have to get the permits and all of the rules and regulations. But the construction industry is plagued by poor productivity, running at near 30-year lows. And that makes it pretty tough to meet any targets. And if you ask the builders, well, nearly 3/4 of construction leaders expect it's going to become increasingly difficult to meet needed demand for housing, particularly as retirements outpace recruitment. Could technology be a solution to improve these productivity levels? Well, a study released by KPMG Canada shows a rapid uptake in technology to improve supply chains and logistics will help get shovels in the ground faster. And of course, we need more people working in the trades. My name is Mike Eppel. Welcome to In This Economy. Joining me today to talk about how to speed up the building process is Jordan Thomson, Director, Infrastructure Advisory at KPMG Canada. Thanks for joining me, Jordan.
Good morning.
Fill me in a little bit on how the construction industry is one of the weakest for productivity for something that's been going on forever. People have been building houses. How difficult can this be? You put the concrete in the ground for foundation, you put up the walls, the roof, and you build. It shouldn't be that difficult, but yet in all, it's just this massively sluggish process that just keeps hitting brick walls, if you will.
Yeah, this is the thing. You hit the nail on the head. Like, construction is the oldest industry in the world. Like, we've been building things as long as we've been Homo sapien. This is something that we should be very good at, but time and time again across Canada and across other developed countries, we see that productivity in the construction sector lags behind the overall economy, and against we tend to compare against manufacturing as a sector. Manufacturing could hit productivity gains of 2 to 3% per annum. We've been since 1997, with where the data kind of starts. It's basically been flat, and if you even look as of last year, we're actually lower than our 1997 level of productivity. So we're not getting better at this. Actually, you could say we're actually getting worse at it.
So what's the root cause of this, though? Like, is it just the lack? Is it an issue of staff, builders, for lack of a better description, people who can actually build a house?
That's a big thing. I think if you look at the unions, and they would tell you that we're kind of below replacement rate for skilled trades, and people aren't prioritizing skilled trades the way that they used to. There's just there's what they call a stigma, or just a will against the industry a bit, but we're not seeing the same influx of skilled and passionate workers that we have in the past. So there's a need to find new ways of doing things. Objectively, we still build houses, in particular, the way we have for 50 years, 100 years, with improvements in materials and building techniques, sure, but ultimately the actual construction process is very, very similar. So there really is a need for a game changer approach to how we do this in order to, like I say, build more with less, acknowledging that I don't think we are going to fix in the near term the staffing issue, the labor availability issue that we currently have. Thus there is a way to there's a need for us to do more with less.
During the pandemic, there were all sorts of supply chain issues and actually getting stuff to build with, the supply of lumber. Everything went up in price. Has that been a problem here of actually getting the materials needed to the sites to get things going, or have things been kind of backlogged in that sense?
Yeah, we've definitely seen those are ripple effects that persist. In particular, we saw like electrical equipment was and continues to be a continually long lead item. So for housing developments, we've heard stories of housing developments that are and major buildings that are complete, but don't have the transformer in place to be able to turn the building on. So and this is an ongoing ripple that we have in that sector in particular. It's supply chain instability continues to be a concern. We've seen that in the data that we got back from our survey. That's a cause of concern. Prior to COVID and prior to the changes in the economy here, we were looking more at just-in-time type supply chains, which is again borrowing from a successful approach in manufacturing. There's definitely been a move away from that concept, going back to stockpiling and having things on site early, which costs more. It just does. But so you have to offset the additional cost of stockpiling against the schedule concerns and risk associated with not having things ready to go at your fingertips.
Yeah. And as I see, one of the big issue has been the lack or shortage of skilled workers. Again, it's the supply and demand and the trades and all these other things. We've heard a lot of talk, about getting more young people into the skilled trades, but that takes time, right? Like it's not something that doesn't change the metric overnight, does it?
No, like that's exactly it. I mean, it takes 4 to 5 to 6 years to fully train someone from apprentice to a journeyman carpenter, a journeyman red seal trade. So these things take time, and I think we're fighting a bit of an uphill battle in that we are overcoming a stigma about going into the trades. These are good paying jobs, and you can form a career and a business around being a carpenter, being a plumber. I would have no issue with my children going into these trades. I think it's a fantastic line of work.
Yeah.
But we're definitely like the education system is not geared to drive those types of careers.
Yeah, and a lot of it too is today, is more technologically advanced. I realize, the basics of building anything, are what they are. But within the home itself, you've got many more things that are, tied to the environment and infrastructure in that way, and making buildings more efficient, and electronics and all these other things that it's not just being able to hammer a nail into a piece of wood. It's about all these things that go into the actual construction of a home.
That's fair. And to say that the buildings have become more complex, like the house has become more complex, and if you extrapolate that across, major infrastructure projects, even more so. And I think that is a contributor to the productivity declines that we've seen, is that we are asking for increasingly large and complex projects, and that just means that you need a higher level of skill, increased planning, and your margin for error is increasingly higher, which means if you screw up, if we build it wrong, we have to build it again. That impacts the productivity. So the complexity of the project absolutely impacts productivity.
So how do you get the square the circle about, like, your study is specifically talking about how technology fits into all of this, and you're talking about AI, and I'm going, okay, how does artificial intelligence work in lockstep to improve productivity? Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll admit, I was kind of surprised when we asked this question. I expected to hear, yeah, that's interesting, but not really for us from the sector. And that was absolutely not what we heard. We heard very much so that people are very excited about this. I had a great discussion with the president of a major contractor saying that looking at every single one of his business units, everyone is looking at applications of AI, and everyone has come up with different use cases within their business unit. So it is absolutely something that they're looking at. I think the focus right now is more on the office setting. So in the planning, estimating, just general kind of business applications, I think that's going to help increase efficiency within the office. The next thing is really how do we begin to apply AI to the work front? And I think that's going to be, really focused on, again, around planning and scheduling and maximizing efficiency of the limited labor team that you have. How do we build this in the most effective and efficient manner, as well as how do we create the right, a more accurate and representative estimate so people understand how much these things cost at the outset, not once we're down the pipe, so that we can, make more informed decisions and optimize the design to make it cheaper, make it faster, and better utilize our resources.
Build a polished wardrobe that shows you stay you wherever you go with Mack Weldon. Use code MAC25 for 25% off your first order of $125 or more at MackWeldon.com.
It's the July 4th sale at Bray & Scarf, going on now with huge savings throughout the store. Save up to 40% on GE Profile and Cafe appliances. Or step up to luxury with free installation on select Monogram appliances. Special financing is available. Shop local and save this July 4th at Bray & Scarf. Visit any of our convenient locations or go to brayandscarf.com, where it doesn't cost more to get more.
And does that also have to do, like when you've got a contractor, they're the scheduling of the delivery of products and such? Does that help in any as well if you bring in more technology from a flow chart standpoint?
Absolutely, yeah. Like I said, prior to the pandemic, we were really focused on what we would call demand-driven supply chain. So just in time. Now I think it's just about a smart and connected supply chain. So making sure that your vendors and your vendors understand when you're going to need things, and we have better transparency on where we are in the kind of logistics supply chain, when things will arrive, what the lead time things are on materials and equipment will be, so you can make a more informed decision, so we're not being surprised on site with things not arriving. So guys are hanging around and we're not productive.
Yeah. Now I'm just reading the notations from the study about things called digital twins. What are digital twins?
That is the hot button topic. It's been around for a couple of years now, and I would go back to it's a subset of or an evolution of a concept called building information modeling, so BIM. And BIM's been around since I was in university, it has been ticketed as the thing that's going to save the industry, but it's been very slow to get uptake. And I think the architects and engineers love 3D modeling and rendering these buildings out in 3D, and when we design a building, we design it in 3D. But the truth of the matter is, when we design it and to put it then get it built, we slice it up and put it on drawings just like the old days. There's a need of understanding a little bit down the supply chain of how to best use these 3D models and combine the different stakeholders to maximize what they're worth. The digital twin is an interesting kind of evolution of that, to go say, okay, we built this model in 3D. We have a great rendering of the project. We know it inside out. So now we're going to use that as our call it the library for all the project information, and basically catalog everything that went into the project, and then use it as an asset management tool to say, okay, we can actually begin to model, okay, if we run this differently, if we run these pumps differently, or run the furnace differently, or do this to the HVAC, what does that do to our energy consumption, life cycle of the building, those kinds of things. So it becomes a really valuable tool for owners.
That's really interesting. I mean, my wife and I we've been talking about building a house and talking with the builder about how it's all put together, and you're right about you don't think about how as you say, the HVAC is all tied into the construction process, and then you've got AI tools where you can go on an app, for goodness sake, and see how your kitchen is going to be designed, and just kind of flip through all sorts of different models. It's amazing. In the old days, you would have all of that drawn out on paper or in a stencil, renderings and such, and now it's just at your fingertips. And yeah, it's a lot faster, isn't it? It's almost instantaneous, the world of AI and the power that gives.
Yeah, exactly. Like the natural progression here is we can do away with, big rolls of drawings on sites, although I think that will always be a part of a construction project, is the big roll of drawings. But, you can have an iPad and you can mark up the drawings and you can, dive into details much faster. And you can have a much more live communication with your architect, with your engineer, to quickly resolve problems on site, as opposed to everything running back to the site office and over to the architect. And that takes 2 days to just have that conversation. We can do things live through the iPad. Just again, trying to do things more efficiently, and get problems resolved more quickly.
You got to have the blueprint spread out over the head of the hood of a pickup truck, right? Like
that's exactly it, right? And that's the way we've been doing it for 1,000 years. We've had the blueprints scrawled across a table somewhere. Yeah. Like, there's got to be a better way.
Yeah. I also saw something about drones, the use of drones. How does that work into a construction site? Is that just to go up and see exactly how things are being, the elevated view or something of that nature?
There's all kinds of applications for drones. And again, this is not new. We've been looking at this for a while. Your flying drone, your traditional drone that everybody's got in their garage these days, we can use it to do surveys. When you're doing your civil works, or you're measuring quantities of fill and things like that. So you can get to fly around. You can it plots points on the stockpile, tells you with a pretty decent amount of accuracy how much fill you've had and how much then you have to pay for it. You can use it to do quantity takeoffs that you would typically have a surveyor do, and that would take a couple days to go out and shoot all these things. Whereas this can do it in a couple hours. You can have it do it in real time. The next application, which is really interesting, there's a Boston Dynamics has this Spot the Dog. I'm sure we've all seen the robot dogs walking around. They have used this they applied it to construction applications. So Pomerleau, which is a major contractor in Eastern Canada, they bought a couple of these things, and they walk around their sites, and they have a little LiDAR scanner on the head of it, and it takes photos, and it takes LiDAR scans of the project, and eventually the thought being you can use that to do your reporting, and you can use it to look at quantity takeoffs and show progress to the owner. Really, this frees up. Typically we would have had a site engineer walking around taking pictures. That frees that person up to go do more value add activities.
Well, now you talk about Boston Dynamics and robots and AI. I mean, are we talking about at some point the robots doing some of the construction or doing some of the heavy lifting or something of that nature? Or are we still years away from that?
Well, I don't think we're as far away as you think we are. I have to say, I had a conversation this week with a major company that's looking at technologies to use robots that we would see in automotive manufacturing type of application, to tie rebar cages. So they can bend the rebar and they can stack it up into a cage, which the rebar cage is what we use to reinforce concrete structures. So you have a bridge or a foundation that has rebar in it. So it creates a cage that's all tied together with little sticks of rebar. That's prefabricated, and we just build it in the factory and we send it off to site. Their claim is that what would take a crew of rod busters a day to do, they can do that in about an hour.
Wow.
And they can work around the clock.
Theoretically, that would boost productivity now, wouldn't it?
Massively, right?
Which is exactly how we started this whole conversation, talking about how to do that. So that's going to be interesting to see exactly how that's all adopted. I mean, every day it seems there are advancements, and that's probably going to keep accelerating. Listen, thank you very much for joining me today.
No, thanks so much. I appreciate the interest.
That was Jordan Thomson, Director of Infrastructure Advisory at KPMG Canada. My name is Mike Eppel, and you've been listening to In This Economy. If you have any questions or story ideas, you can email me at mike.eppel@rci.rogers.com. Follow us on X on our partner podcasts at The Big Story FPN, or leave a voicemail at 416-935-5935. You can also find us on the Seeker app. That's SEEKR. Please rate, review, follow, and share. Again, thanks for listening.
There's a lot of pressure to wear the right clothes for every situation, but the clothes don't make the man. With Mack Weldon, you can build a wardrobe that looks polished in any setting and tells the world you stay you wherever you go. Go to MackWeldon.com and get 25% off your first order of $125 or more with promo code MACK25. That's MackWeldon.com. Promo code MACK25.
It's the July 4th sale at Bray & Scarf, going on now with huge savings throughout the store. Save up to 40% on GE Profile and Cafe appliances. Or step up to luxury with free installation on select Monogram appliances. Special financing is available. Shop local and save this July 4th at Bray & Scarf. Visit any of our convenient locations or go to brayandscarf.com, where it doesn't cost more to get more.